بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين حبيب إله العالمين المصطفى أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وقرآنه الحميد وقوله الحق: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الشيطان يعدكم الفقر ويأمركم بالفحشاء والله يعدكم مغفرة منه وفضلا والله واسع عليم. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد. The words of Amir al-Mu'mineen Salamullahi alayh, if they are studied from different perspectives, we see the great blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed upon humanity through Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayh. That's why the loss of Imam Ali alayhi salam is a loss for humanity at large. Tonight, if Allah gives us tawfiq, we'll take a look at the theme of poverty in Nahj al-Balaghah in relationship to the Quran. When we speak about poverty, most people think of financial poverty. People who are living in poor conditions, for example, they don't have much money, they are in need of support. That is true. However, Imam Ali alayhi salam in Nahj al-Balaghah gives different definitions of poverty. We will go over some of them, inshallah, if Allah gives us tawfiq tonight. The ayah says in Surah Al-Baqarah 268, الشيطان يعدكم الفقر. Shaitan promises you poverty. ويأمركم بالفحشاء. And he orders you to do evil acts. والله يعدكم مغفرة من. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises you forgiveness, وفضلا, and more. Although this ayah comes, when we take a look at the series of ayat, it comes at the concept of infaq, spending, giving. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, according to some mufassirin, they say that when the shaitan is promising you poverty, yani shaitan is telling you don't spend money. You have $100. If you give 20%, you're left with $80. If you pay your khums, for example, you're left with $20. You're left with $80. That's less than the 100. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, don't look at it this way. In another ayah, which is close to this ayah in terms of the numbers, مثل الذين ينفقون أموالهم في سبيل الله كمثل حبة أنبتت 7 سنابل في كل سنبلة 100 حبة والله يضاعف لمن يشاء. Those who spend in the way of Allah, their spending is like one grain. مثل حبة. This gives rise to 7, and this 7 gives rise to 100. And Allah gives rise to even more, gives more to whomever He wills. Yani Allah can multiply that $20 many folds for you and gives it back to you. So don't calculate things in this way. We do have also in the riwayat that when a person makes a pledge, a commitment, especially during fundraising times, people sometimes become enthusiastic. They say, okay, I'll donate $1,000. Yeah, I make a pledge. Then they go home, they open the mail, bills and bills. These days we only get bills in the mail. You hardly get anything else in the mail. So you open, oh, this is my my bill. It's been really cold this last month. My utilities bill has doubled. Oh, okay. Next bill, oh, my son's tuition fee. Okay, this is also, mashallah, he's taken 5 courses this semester. All right. Okay. So then you call, you say, that $1,000, I'll make it $100. Make it $100. Okay. Shaitan tries to make you think about bills, tuition, problems, etc., so that you don't pay the $1,000. That's why in the riwayat it said, once you make a pledge, you make a niyyah to donate, then do it right away. Right away, do it so that shaitan does not have time to dissuade you from it. So although the ayah is talking in the context of spending money, but if you take a look at the global context, الشيطان يعدكم الفقر. Shaitan promises you poverty in everything, not just in financial poverty. So what other poverties are there? Let's take a look at Nahj al-Balaghah so that we can develop some understanding. He speaks, salamullahi alayh, of poverty in knowledge, in ilm. For example, he says, لا غنى كالعقل ولا فقر كالجهل. There is no wealth better than wisdom, knowledge. Yani if you have some nice knowledge, good knowledge, that's true wealth. ولا فقر كالجهل. No poverty like ignorance. That's a form of poverty, which is lacking knowledge, not knowing what to do. When someone does not have knowledge, starts giving opinions, then you can see what problems can arise. A person sits down here and, for example, says, my stomach is not feeling well these days. MashaAllah, everyone becomes a doctor. Try hot water, when you break your iftar, at the iftar, hot water, it's really good, So should I add tea into it? Other person says, yeah, you can add tea to it, it's no problem. Hot water with tea, the tea is just a flavor. Third person says, no, add also a mint in it as well. Put mint in it. The fourth says, no, all that did not work for me. The other, mashallah, everyone becomes a doctor, everyone. When it comes to religion, everyone is a faqih, mashallah. Fiqh, everybody is a faqih. This is halal, this is haram, tahir, najis, yes, why not? Should we do Eid on Wednesday? Yeah, everybody is doing Eid, so why not? Let's do hashrun ma'an nasi Eid. Whether we see the moon, we don't see the moon. That country in that particular region, it declared Eid 3 days earlier. Khalas, it said that so and so is Eid. Khalas, we all do Eid. Ya akhi, this food, it's halal. So everyone is eating. Now I have to check everyone. Khalas, we all eat together. But that's a problem. If you don't know about something, say I don't. نصف العلم قول لا أعلم. نصف العلم قول لا أعلم. كلام أمير المؤمنين سلام الله عليه. Half of knowledge is to say, I don't know. It is said one day, it is attributed to a Shaykh al-Ansari, قدس الله نفسه الزكية. Shaykh al-Ansari, Murtada al-Ansari, big marja' from about 150 years ago. 150 years ago, he became the marja' al-taqleed of his days. Yani every Shi'i on that day was doing taqleed of Shaykh al-Ansari. So a group of people come from Iran. He was in Najaf. And today, if you go to the haram of Amir al-Mu'mineen, salamullahi alayh, if you enter from the bab called Bab al-Qibla, look to the left, you'll see his qabr is there. You see his picture and the qabr is there. Ridwanullah ta'ala alayh. So a group from Iran came, his muqallideen, they do taqleed of him. They asked him a question. He paused for a few seconds, he raised his head, he said, I don't know. The answer to this particular question, I don't know. Okay, so then continued, he answers a few more, then they asked another question. He looked at them, he said, that one, I don't know. Few more questions, he answers, and then some, he said, I don't know. So then, maybe 3 times, 4 times, 5 times out of all the questions that they had. He said, I don't know, because when they came with a list of questions. We're not talking about telephones on those days or things. So they went around their whole town. They said, we're going to Najaf. Who has questions? So everybody starts. And they come with maybe 200 questions, for example. So he answers out in total, maybe 10 questions, give or take. He did not answer. He said, I don't know. So they said, then what shall we say to these people? The Marja' says, I don't know. What will they say? They say, Shaykh al-Ansari does not know. He said, tell them, Shaykh al-Ansari knows enough to become the Marja' al-Taqleed, the faqih. Shaykh al-Ansari is not Imam Ma'soom to know all the answers. What Shaykh al-Ansari does not know is far more than what he knows. Go tell the Shia this. This is out of his humility. It's not easy for a alim, marja' al-taqleed, to say, I don't know. But he does it. He says it. Khalas. He says, I don't know. Nisful ilm qawlu la a'lam. He doesn't give fatwa. He's not sure. And you have everybody giving fatwa. That's why the Imam Salamullahi alayh refers to the time of the second Khalifa. The second Khalifa. I read to you the other day, khutbah Shaykh khutbah, the third sermon of Nahj al-Balaghah. فَمُنِيَ النَّاسِ لَعَمْرِي بِخَبْطٍ وَشَمَاسٍ وَتَلَوُّنٍ وَاعْتِرَاضٍ. People started getting in confusion. They'd have no clue what's going on about religion. One day he gets up and he says to the people, if I hear anyone of the women taking a dowry more than the dowry of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa, if I hear any of that, I will take it away from her. So a lady gets up from in the masjid, in the crowd. She gets up and she said, this is not up to you. It's not you. Who are you to tell me that you're going to take our dowry away? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَآتَيْتُمْ إِحْدَاهُنَّ قِنْطَارًا فَلَا تَأْخُذُوا مِنْهُ شَيْئًا أَتَأْخُذُونَهُ بُهْتَانًا وَإِثْمًا مُبِينًا. Surah An-Nisa, ayah 20. If you give any one of them any money, you cannot take it back. This is her dowry. Khalas, her haqq. How dare you to take this? If Allah says you cannot take it, you come and take it? He looked at her and he said, she's right. كل الناس أفقه من فلان حتى ربات الحجال. He said, all people are more knowledgeable than me. This is the second Khalifa speaking. Even the women in their homes, and the women who are housewives, who don't interact much with men and so on and so forth, he's saying, even they know more than me. Okay. So it became a trend, a trend. These days you have a trend on TikTok or something, this became a trend. So for example, Al-Qurtubi, he said, أصابت امرأة وأخطأ عمر. Al-Razi says, كل الناس أفقه من عمر حتى المخدرات في البيوت. Even everyone knows better than Umar. So how did he become the Khalifa? Imagine, this is the Khalifa of the Muslims, and therefore this is one of the problems, one of the issues. And hence Imam Ali alayhi salam says, مني الناس لعمر الله. People got really confused during his time about the ahkam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So one kind of poverty, faqrul ilm. Someone who does not have much knowledge, he's faqir. He has poverty. That's one. Two, sometimes it is not knowledge. Sometimes people have knowledge, but subhanallah, they lack awareness. They lack wa'i, to be awakened. I have come across someone with a PhD, and he also does research and publishes. It might be safe to say that this person really is not a very intelligent person. It might be safe to say this. You'll be surprised. When I sit down and have a conversation with him, you think like, which world does this guy live in? Does he not read the newspapers? Does he not talk? Let me tell you another example, easier for you to understand. These last American elections, the last one, when Biden became the president, Trump and Biden, right? They say 75 million Americans voted for Trump. 75 million Americans voted for Trump. This is after 4 years in office. And then you saw what they did after Biden took office. The whole attack on the White House. You saw this. What do you call those people? Those 75 million people, all of them uneducated? All of them don't have degrees? All of them carry rifles and walk on the streets? Okay. Some people, This guy who I told you last night spends $110 million in golfing. So if anyone sits there and thinks for himself, like, he's a billionaire, why is he taking our tax money and spending it on his golfing? And then they go and vote for him again. This is a kind of poverty. Imam says, أكبر الفقر الحمق. The worst kind of poverty is someone to be an idiot. والعياذ بالله أجلكم الله. حمق. Lacking awareness, does not have a clue about this world. Yes, you may have someone with a PhD. He knows this field. خلاص, this is it. This is how he sees. Speak to him a little bit outside this field that has no clue what's going on. I would sit down with this individual with a PhD and I would talk to him, for example, about Iraq. I would talk to him something, he has no clue. It's as if this is like a different world I'm speaking of. Not a country that, people talk about and there's been wars and invasions and no clue. You'd be like, which world does he come from? He's a PhD. Okay. This is a kind of this example. One day a man came to Ja'far ibn Sulaiman, the cousin of al-Mansur al-Abbasi. Mansur al-Abbasi, when he became the Khalifa, Mansur is the one who ordered the killing of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. So during the Abbasids, his cousin became the governor of Medina and Mecca for some time, and then he became the governor of Basra. So a man comes to him. He says, أصلح الله الوالي جاري ناصبي رافضي مرجئ قدري. He says, my neighbor is a nasibi, يعني he hates أهل البيت. ناصبي يعني ينصب العدا. He's also رافضي. رافضي يعني follower of أهل البيت, يعني contradiction. Okay. مرجئ is a group of Muslims. They were deviants, but complete opposite to the Qadaris. Qadari, who are the people of Qadar? It's not time for us to discuss about all this. Okay. Al-Qadariyya, مجوس هذه الأمة, كما جاء في الرواية. So he said to him, why? He got surprised at this, all contradiction. Nasibi, Rafidi. He said, why do you say this? He says, يسب الحجاج ابن الزبير الذي هدم الكعبة على علي ibn Abi Sufyan. He says he swears, he insults al-Hajjaj ibn al-Zubair, who Hajjaj ibn Yusuf al-Thaqafi, who destroyed the Kaaba over Ali ibn Abi Sufyan. Muawiyah. He sat down looking at him like this. He said, لا أدري على ما أحسدك حذقك في المقالات أم لعلمك في الأنساب. He says, I don't know, should I envy you on what? I feel, should I be jealous of you because of your deep knowledge about the theology, the different theologies of the people? مقالات يعني المذاهب. You tell me Nasibi where, Rafidi where. Complete contradiction. You're either a Nasibi or you're a Rafidi. You can't be the two at the same time. Qadari, Murji, where? What are you talking about? And then Hajjaj ibn al-Zubair, Ali ibn Abi Sufyan. He says, I don't know what. He says, go, ruh, Allah. But such people, sometimes in history they come up. And until this day and age, and you're laughing here. I was reading the other day about dangerous TikTok challenges. Some individuals come on TikTok and they pose a challenge. They say, let's do this challenge. And people imitate. And people end up in hospital. Some of them die. Some of them end up with the police. The other day, Ontario police, just last year in 2023, in November, I believe, they issued a warning about a new challenge that you go to somebody's door, you ring the bell, and you kick the door 3 times as hard as you can and run away. So Ontario police issued now a warning. They said, please, parents, educate your children about this trend. This is dangerous. They can get into trouble. If they do this, this is trespassing on people's property. They can end up in jail, you know. But people follow this kind of trends. You say, where's their aql? This is kind of poverty, wal-'iyadhu billah. Kind of poverty. That's why it's important, brothers and sisters, it's important for us to sit down with our children, as I was mentioning last night. I know I sound like a broken record now, but it's important to sit down with our children regularly, talk to them, educate them. I'll tell you, for example, why is it mujalasatul alimi ibadah? To sit down with the ulama is ibadah. It's a form of ibadah. Why? Because the alims, what do they talk about? Sports cars or fashion? Or they talk about fiqh, ilm, ayah in the Quran. Second, the alim, when he talks, he just smiles and talks and like this, you know. No, he's talking with dignity, with respect. So the more you sit down with the alim, inevitably, subconsciously, what are you going to be absorbing? Some useful knowledge, the way he sits, the way he talks. When someone walks into the majlis, for example, what does the alim do? How does he, for example, greet this individual? Does he stand up? Does he sit down? When he stands up, who does he stand up for? All this is knowledge. All this is khair. This is sunnah. This alim must have read, heard, seen. And so mujalasatul ulama'i ibadah. And that's why we read in Dua Abu Hamza al-Thumali, أم لعلك فقدتني من مجالس العلماء فخذلتني. Maybe you did not see me sitting with the ulama, sitting down with the ulama, so you let me down, Ya Allah. يعني I became a failure. خذلان والعياذ بالله. ضد التوفيق. توفيق والخذلان. Tawfiq is when you have success for ibadah, for worship, obeying Allah. خذلان is the opposite. يعني see how important it is. This is why we should sit down with our children. If you remember, those of you who are a bit older, يعني in your maybe 60s, 50s, 60s, and all of you young, يعني older, I said, not doesn't mean you're old, older. الشيء بالشيء يذكر. A friend of mine, he says, I went to the Hajj back in the 80s. In the 80s, early 80s, he said, I went to Hajj. This friend of mine is from Iran. He says, as I was doing tawaf, I saw next to me a very old man from Iran doing tawaf. Very old. But he's doing tawaf, mashallah, he's walking. He said, I looked at him, very old man. So I told him, out of respect, he said, Father, Pedar, out of respect, Father, why are you doing the tawaf walking? You can... back in those days, if you remember, they used to carry you. Those people used to put you on this kind of something, and then they would carry you, if you remember that. So he said they can carry you, and that's enough. This friend of mine is a sheikh. He says it suffices for you. They can do the tawaf, they take you around. He said he looked at me like this. He said, son. He said, do you know how old I am? He said, no. He said, I am 114 years old. This is my 99th Hajj. I've been coming to Hajj since I've been 15. He says, this is my 99th Hajj. And if Allah gives me life next year, I will come back for my 100th. Okay. He says, all my Hajjs, I do all the a'mal on my own. The tawaf, I walk the tawaf. Sa'i, I go sa'i. Arafat. He says, what are you talking about? Sitting then on this whatever. So what I'm trying to say, if you are under 114, you're still youth. Alhamdulillah, you're still shabab and you have health, mashallah. So, but if those of you who are 50s, 60s, if you remember the parents, when they used to take you, your fathers, your mothers, used to take you for gatherings. And they used to sit down, tell you sit down next to me, you sit down, and you would see your mother, your father, how they talk with the other people. For example, when someone comes in, your father would tell you, stand up and go say salam alaikum to him. So you go say salam alaikum. If your salam is not good, your father would teach you, this is not the way you do salam. This is how you do salam. Do you remember these things? Okay. Slowly you learned all, you're absorbing everything, so then you learn how to sit down. I've been to countries where you find like a 10-year-old in the shop selling. No one is supervising him, mashallah. 10-year-old. You know, in this country they call it child labor. But this 10-year-old, mashallah, you want to buy something, you say like, how much is this? He says, this is, for example, $5. But if you want this one, I have this one for $6. This is much better quality. See, he's 10-year-old, mashallah. He will sell you the whole store. He'll sell you your own clothes. He knows. How did he learn all this? Where did he? Look at our 10-year-olds, mashallah. You saw yesterday, on their games and whatever in their own world. Okay. This is what? Akhlaq. But where do they learn it? When we sit down with our children, we teach them, we educate, we bring them to the Husayniyah, we sit next to them in the Husayniyah, and we educate them, we teach them. This is how they learn. So this is a second kind of poverty, wal-'iyadu billah. The poverty of lack of awareness. Al-hamq wal-'iyadu billah. Third, the third kind of poverty that Imam Salamullah alayhi refers to is a poverty in terms of security and political protection. For example, he says, Salamullah alayhi, وَمَا أَنْتُمْ بِرُكْنٍ يُمَالُ بِكُمْ وَلَا زَوَافِرَ يعني أركان عِزٍ يُفْتَقَرُ إِلَيْكُمْ. يُفْتَقَرْ إِلَيْكُمْ. You are not a pillar that one can lean against. Yani you're not someone I can reliably trust and lean against you. Nor are you people who are worthy of being trusted. I cannot trust you people. He says in another khutbah, يَا أَشْبَاهَ الرِّجَالِ وَلَسْتُمْ بِرِجَالِ. He says, you are the likes of men, but you're not men. You don't act like men. Okay. لَقَدْ مَلَأْتُمْ قَلْبِي قَيْحًا. You filled my heart with wounds. You're pain. Okay. It's painful being your leader. لَا رَأْيَ لِمَنْ لَا يُطَاعُ. He says, there is no أو لا إمرة لمن لا يطاع. There is no commandship for someone who is not obeyed. He says, I picked up the sword. I was under 20 when I picked up the sword. And here I am over 60 and I'm still fighting. And now people are accusing me of not knowing about wars. He says, I don't know about wars. What he's trying to say, I was born with a sword in my hand fighting next to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. That's what he's trying to say. The battles of Badr and Uhud and Khandaq, who brought the victory to the Muslim? I was the one. The tactics, I knew tactics of war. But you guys don't listen to me. And what am I going to do if you don't listen? And I give this example to the Muslims, to the people. You put the two strongest people in the world, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa and Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, together. But when the people disobey, what happened in Uhud? Muslims lost. Allah teaches the Muslims. Yes, both of them could have defeated the whole army, but using their nubuwwah and imamah. From a worldly perspective, no. The worldly matters, no. The army ran away, khalas, those were the bigger crowd, they won the battle. But this is what the Imam Salamullah alayhi is saying. You guys are not worth, you have poverty, you're impoverished for security. There is no security with you. So this is a kind of poverty. Look at the way the Muslims are living today. They're impoverished for security. They don't have any security today. A small group of people can dominate the entire region and manipulate the whole region and monopolize the whole region. That's what happens. So that's a third. The fourth kind of faqr or poverty that Imam Salamullah alayhi refers to is the poverty of the akhlaq. That's another kind of poverty. He says, شَرُّ الْفَقْرِ فَقْرُ النَّفْسِ. The worst kind of poverty is the poverty of the nafs. What he refers to is the akhlaq. You have some people who are very successful, but when it comes to manners, they have absolutely no manners. When I say successful, maybe financially successful. That person who became the president of the country, who's now going to become the president again. Financially, he's a billionaire. Power-wise, he became the president of the US. Fame, he's famous and known. But what about his akhlaq? Have you seen him how he talks and how he interacts with people? How he humiliates people? Yani if he has the ability, he would come out and say, "Ana rabbukum al-a'la." You know, I am your God and khalas, worship me. But who cares? Who cares about this? It's akhlaq. Akhlaq. So akhlaq is extremely important. You may have someone who's poor, but very humble, very kind. Rich, but very humble, very kind. You may have someone who's poor, but very arrogant, wal-'iyadhu billah, the other way around. It works this way. Akhlaq is extremely important. Manners. Do you remember the 10 things I advised you on the Laylatul Qadr? The second thing was, do you remember? Manners. After taqwa Allah, I said the manners. Pray for good akhlaq. Good akhlaq. Interestingly, they showed there is this researcher. She did research from 40 major corporations in the world. She asked the CEOs of those 40 big corporations. She asked them about the characteristics of a leader that would make a good leader. Interestingly, the number one response that came was empathy. You know what's empathy? Empathy is putting yourself in someone else's shoes. As a leader, if you put yourself in someone else's shoes, then you will try to see things from their perspective. So you'll be nice. Basically, it's being nice. Being nice is a great attribute of a leader. And it makes common sense. Any one of you who has ever worked for a nasty boss, you hate your job. Every morning you go to the work and you say, I wish I can quit. Okay? Yani the whole environment is toxic. But if the boss is nice, you would love your work. You go there, your well-being, you would like to give it 200%. Why? Because he's nice. So that's an important attribute. Ubaydullah ibn Yazid al-Ju'fi. Ubaydullah ibn Yazid al-Ju'fi. This man was with Imam Ali alayhi salam. Don't confuse him with Al-Hur ibn Yazid al-Riyahi. Ubaydullah ibn Yazid al-Ju'fi, different one. He was with Imam Ali. In the Battle of Siffin, he flipped and joined Muawiyah. He disappeared. And he disappeared. They woke up in the morning, he's gone. They didn't know what happened to him. So some people thought he got killed in the battle. And he disappeared. When they went back to Kufa after the battle, his wife said, "Where is my husband?" They told her he got killed. He was killed in the battle. So she did not go and ask Imam Ali alayhi salam. She did the iddah. And then she went and remarried. After some time, he comes back to Kufa at night. He comes home. He knocks on his door. No one is home. He comes in the middle of the night. He goes, asks people here and there, where is this lady, so on and so forth. They told her she got married. Her husband died, and so she got married. So he goes, who did she get married to? So and so. He goes and knocks on the door. She opens the door. She finds her husband in front of her. Ubaydullah ibn Yazid al-Ju'fi. He tells her, "You're my wife. Let's go home." She says, "What wife? What home? I'm married to someone else now." So he sat down. He's like, who can solve this problem for me now? Who can solve it? Only one person can. So the next morning he goes to Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. Imam Ali alayhi salam looks at him. He tells him, why did you do what you... Imam Ali knows, salamullahi alayhi. Imam Ali knows what happened. He tells him, how could you leave us and go to Muawiyah and all this? Now he had prepared a nice response. He said, okay, I did what I did. وَهَلْ يَمْنَعُنِي هَذَا مِنْ عَدْلِكَ يَا أَمِيرَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ? Will this deprive, okay, I did what I did, but will this deprive me from your justice, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen? He knows who he's coming to. He knows. He knows. قال لا. He says, no, this is not going to deprive you of my justice. Which leader would do this? Today, in today's world, this would be called treason. Treason. And many countries, developed countries in the world, they would kill him. He would be killed in today's world. Imam Ali looks at him and says, no, this is not going to deprive him of my justice. And he gives him the hukum. He gives him the hukum. He goes and fulfills the hukum. She never asked Imam Ali alayhi salam. She never investigated. She acted on her own. So the Imam salamullah alayhi solved the problem for him. But this is the wealth of akhlaq of Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullah alayhi. And subhanallah, his Shia, his companions were just the same. I told you about the story of Malik, if you remember. Malik al-Ashtar, when someone hit him with a pebble. Same akhlaq. He's with Imam Ali. He's gained his akhlaq, salamullah alayhi. The akhlaq of Imam Ali, salamullah alayhi. This is the akhlaq we need to aim for. This is the kind of manners. Next, the last one that I will discuss here for the sake of time is this. So all this poverty, we talked about poverty of knowledge, poverty of awareness and education. The third kind of poverty, we talked about the poverty of security and political poverty. Fourth one, we said about the akhlaq. The fifth one is financial poverty. Indeed, financial poverty is there. Let me tell you something. In 2006, a professor from Bangladesh by the name of Dr. Muhammad Yunus won the Nobel Prize for Peace. He had established a bank that would give microcredits to poor people. And without complicated micro $100, $200, $300, he says the maximum we would give is $300 loan. We would give it to the people on a handshake. He said most of these people can't even read and write. So you don't give them like long loan applications and all this. They would come to me, for example. So he started propagating this idea. Someone comes, for example, a widow. A widow, she's living in impoverished conditions. She would come to him. He would say, okay, what would you like to learn? Let's say, for example, she says, I would like to learn sewing. He says, okay. How much will it cost for you to learn sewing? Maybe, let's say, for example, $50. He says, okay, we'll give you $50 as a loan. You go learn sewing. Once you learn, you come back. So she goes, she learns sewing, she comes back. She says, okay, I learned sewing. He says, okay, now we will buy you a sewing machine. How much? For example, let's say $100. Okay, we'll buy you a $100 sewing machine. So now she starts sewing for people. So now she's learned a profession and she's working. So she becomes independent. And slowly when she starts making money, she starts paying back. He says most of these people pay back. Most of them. This is the whole concept of microcredit. And he says on a handshake. He says those people don't know how to read or write. Khalas. She tells me 150, for example, take it. Okay. Someone comes, he says, I need a motorbike and I will deliver things with it. He says, okay, how much a motorbike costs? For example, let's say $300. Okay, we'll buy you $300 on a handshake. He goes and he starts delivering, making money, and he starts paying back. He says most of those people pay us back. Most of them. They appreciate the value that we give them, independent. So he won the Nobel Prize for Peace for this idea in 2006. Dr. Muhammad Yunus, I read in one of his books, he says the following. He says, the reason there is poverty in the world today is not because there is lack of resources. He says the reason that there is poverty in the world today is because of the lack of the distribution of these resources. And then he gives this statistics. He says 94% of the world's wealth is in the hands of 40% of the world's population. I repeat, 94% of the world's wealth is in the hands of 40% of the world's population. The remaining 60% has to share the 6%. He says that's why there's poverty in the world today. Yani just to give you an analogy so that you can see the picture. You have 100 people in a room and you have a cake with 100 slices. Logic says each one gets how many slices? One slice, correct? 100, 100. Okay, that's what logic dictates. What happens in the reality of the world? You take 40 people, you say, you step aside, 60 people on this way. Okay. 94 slices, you give it to the 40 people. How many slices are left? 6. You tell the 60 people, here, there you go, you share it. What's going to happen? Wars are going to happen. Battles are going to happen. Fighting is going to happen. Poverty is going to happen. He says that's the problem. This is a professor, Nobel laureate, and he's written many books. Imam Ali alayhi salam gave that in a one line 1400 years ago. Listen to what Imam Ali alayhi salam says. إن الله سبحانه فرض في أموال الأغنياء أقوات الفقراء فما جاع فقير إلا بما متع به غني والله تعالى سائلهم عن ذلك. Those of you who understand Arabic, you saw the one-liner. I'll translate it for you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's what he's saying. Surely Allah, farada, obligated in the money of the rich, the sustenance of the poor. Yani Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala differentiated. Yes, He did not give equally. He did not give equally, but He gave enough. If He had not given enough, He would not have been fair. Wal-'iyadhu billah. That's not fair. But Allah tests people. He tests the rich to see will He give, and He tests the poor to test if He's going to be patient. Okay. So it's a test for people. So He says Allah mandated, obligated the wealth of the poor and the money of the rich. So He says no poor person goes hungry except with what a rich man has deprived. Yani in theory, if every person in the world today pays khums and pays zakat, in theory, there would not be a single poor person in the world today. And then Imam Ali says, Wallahu ta'ala sa'iluhum an dhalik. Allah will ask them about this on the day of judgment. On the day of judgment, He's going to ask them. I gave you all this money. I remember once, brothers and sisters, there is a very famous basketball player. If I say his name, most of these youth will be, I know him. Very famous. Some of them maybe have his picture in their bedrooms. Interestingly, you walk into some of these youth's bedrooms, you see pictures of, actors, actresses, sports people. You say, where is an ayah of the Quran? Do you have an ayah in the Quran, calligraphy, for example? Picture of one of our maraja' al-taqleed, for example. Put a picture of this. This sportsman, very famous. Very famous. He wanted to get married. His wedding cost $50 million. We're talking about the wedding of a very rich. Okay. The last day, and tomorrow is the wedding, so all the guests are coming in, everyone is in, he calls the wedding off. So he calls his friend, and he tells him, the wedding is off, but you guys, I'll give you my credit card, go and have fun. Enjoy the party. $50 million on a wedding. Okay. How many people would have been, fed with $50 million? Can you imagine? Just now in a country, I won't mention which country, in a particular country, they say this person had the most luxurious wedding in the world, inviting one very famous singer to the wedding to sing. They say it's estimated that her cost was about $10 to $12 million. Just her cost. The wedding lasted for a whole month. A whole month. Not one day, a month of the wedding. So you can imagine, if just this person cost him $12 million, how much did that whole thing cost? And in that country, there are millions of people who are impoverished. That if you give $10, $5 to people, it will feed them for a week maybe. So imagine, now you see why there are poor people in the world. Dr. Muhammad Yunus is a professor and he's a Nobel laureate. He mentioned, Imam Ali alayhi salam mentioned it 1400 years ago. This is one of the reasons why there is poverty in the world today. One of the reasons. I'll leave you with this, brothers and sisters. One of the ulama said we should be reading Nahj al-Balaghah, each and every one of us should be reading Nahj al-Balaghah, but read it from the lens of your profession. If you're a psychologist, read Nahj al-Balaghah as a psychologist. You're a doctor, read Nahj al-Balaghah as a doctor. You're a financial advisor and someone who's in finance and economics, read it as an economist. and so on. He says, you'll find wonders in Nahj al-Balaghah. I told some people when I did my PhD on the theology of Nahj al-Balaghah, I said, I wish there is someone who does the PhD on the letter of Imam Ali to Malik al-Ashtar. That requires a PhD. We still don't have one, at least in the English academia. In the English academia, in Western academia, it does not exist. This is what we need to invest time on, not on so-and-so. People, sometimes you look at their theses, they're writing about so-and-so, X, Y, and Z, and I'm like, who is X, Y, and Z? With all due respect, yani, okay, whatever. He's a philosopher. What philosophy does he have when you compare it to Ali ibn Abi Talib, salamullahi alayh, and Imam al-Sadiq, alayhi salam? This is the true knowledge. So you see how Imam, salamullah alayhi, Amir al-Mu'mineen, gives us this beautiful description of poverty with such deep thinking. We have been thinking about poverty as just financial. Imam, no, expense. And hence now we understand the ayah, Ya ayyuhan nasu, antumul fuqara'u ilallah. Oh people, you are in poverty and need of Allah. We are all in poverty. Even if you're a billionaire, you have some knowledge poverty. Even if you're whatever, you have a knowledge, you have money poverty, and so on and so forth. We are all in need of Allah. Let's raise our hands, inshallah, in the dua, brothers and sisters, in these last couple minutes before the adhan, in this holy night of this holy month. And we are in the final few nights. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our dua, fulfill our hajat and needs. Many people have requested us to remember them in our dua. May Allah, inshallah, fulfill their needs, cure those of them who are ill. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ 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 أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ. اللهم إنا نسألك وندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم، يا الله 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 يا الله. إلهي بفاطمة وأبيها وبعلها وبنيها والسر المستودع فيها اكشف عنا السوء يا الله. اللهم اغفر ذنوبنا يا الله، كفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار مع محمد وآله الأطهار يا الله. إلهنا بجاه أمير المؤمنين عليه السلام اجعلنا وذريتنا إلى يوم الدين من شيعته المتقين يا الله، ومن خدمة الحسين عليه السلام المخلصين يا الله. وارزقنا شفاعة الزهراء عليها السلام في الدنيا وفي القبر وفي الآخرة يا الله. اللهم ربنا اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. رب ارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا، اجزهما بالإحسان إحسانا وبالسيئات عفوا وغفرانا. رب اجعلني مقيم الصلاة ومن ذريتي ربنا وتقبل دعاء. اللهم اقض حوائج المؤمنين والمؤمنات، شافي وعافي جميع مرضى المؤمنين والمؤمنات، على الخصوص من أوصونا بالدعاء منهم. اللهم اقض حوائجهم. المرضى المنظورين منهم ألبسهم لباس العافية، وارحم المسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات في مشارق الأرض ومغاربها برحمتك الواسعة يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج، اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج، اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج، واجعلنا من شيعته وأنصاره وأعوانه والمستشهدين بين يديه. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين، لقضاء الحوائج ولشفاء المرضى ولكشف هذه الغمة عن هذه الأمة ولتعجيل فرج مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان، وإلى أرواح أمواتنا وأمواتكم وأموات الجالسين والحاضرين والشهداء والعلماء، على الخصوص إلى روح المرحوم الحاج علي أحمد مطر، ومن أوصونا بالدعاء رحم الله من قرأ السورة المباركة الفاتحة مع الصلوات. الله